Hey guys, this is Jimmy coming at you with another video for you guys today. So we're going to be continuing our Wrestling Reimagining series for WCW 1999. So last time we left off was the January pay-per-view sold out. So we are going to transition into our February pay-per-view, which will be Super Brawl IX. Now, Super Brawl was one of WCW's biggest events alongside the Great American Bash, Bash at the Beach, Halloween Havoc, and Starrcade. And it's very interesting to know in this sense because Super Brawl IX would be the last time that WCW would outsell a WWF pay-per-view. I believe that year was St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was headlined by the Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon cage match. So it's very amazing to know that even early on in 99 that WCW was still in the game and still drawing big numbers. And, just looking at the buy rates, they drew about 450,000 and selling out 15,880 in attendance. So it's actually a pretty monumental feat. And this would be, like I said, the last time that a non-WWE pay-per-view would hold a pay-per-view record of that caliber until AEW 21 years later. Was it 21 or 22 years later? I'm looking to capitalize on that and hoping maybe with the card that I put together that I could at least come up with something just as good, maybe a tad bit better, given the talent that WCW had. So I'm really going to do what I can do, do the best I can, like I've been doing with these fantasy bookings, and see what you guys think. So without further ado, might as well get kicking the gear and rebook Super Brawl IX. So to start off the show, what we have here is a final round of a tournament to crown new World Tag Team Champions. So we have the two members of the LWO with Psicosis along with Juventud Guerrera, and they'll be taking on the likes of Rey Mysterio Jr. and the reigning Cruiserweight Champion Billy Kidman. Now, this is a continuation of the LWO against Kidman and Mysterio, and also a tournament, like I said, to crown new World Tag Team Champions. And I know some folks are kind of wondering exactly, why are we crowning new World Tag Team Champions, you ask? So, there was some controversy surrounding about the tag title belts around the time of Halloween Havoc. So, long story short, so you had, Rick Steiner as one half of the tag team champions, and Buff Bagwell, who at the time was believed to have been out of the NWO. So basically during that time, Bagwell was sidelined due to a neck injury. And they spent several months wondering whether Bagwell can get back in the ring. And then you had the NWO just harassing Buff Bagwell, namely Hogan. So they were kind of playing that up throughout the summer. And then we got to the fall of 98 when Bagwell managed to make his in-ring return. So he volunteers to team with Rick Steiner to take on the two members of NWO Hollywood. So in one of the weirdest bookings that they've done, so they did like a little Russo swerve where Bagwell just turns on Rick Steiner and then rejoins the NWO. Despite that, Rick Steiner ended up winning that tag match because, his partner turned on him, so Steiner had to look for a partner. And they had, what was it, like one of the members of High Voltage. But, eventually the belts got vacated. And just the tag team division in 1998 just at a weird point because a lot of tag teams broke up. Like Booker and Stevie went their separate ways. Booker was coming to his own as a solo competitor, winning the TV title. Stevie Ray joined the NWO. Wrath and Martis broke up. Let's see, Faces of Fear broke up as well. Hall and Nash branched off their separate ways, with Kevin Nash leading the Wolfpack, Scott Hall joining NWO Hollywood. So there was just a number of tag teams that just ended up breaking up, and the tag team division was just in shambles during this time. So it just seemed like they didn't have a very clear direction of what to do with the tag titles. So instead, they just kind of went ahead and, basically vacated the belts by the time 99 rolled around. So now that Ric Flair is WCW president, so he does make an announcement that a tournament will be decided to crown new World Tag Team Champions. So the important thing that you need to know is that in the semifinal rounds, you will have Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman to defeat NWO members Scott Norton and Brian Adams. And on the other side of the bracket, Juventud and Psicosis will go over the team of Raven and Chris Kanyon. This is kind of my substitute as far as spotlighting a cruiserweight match on pay-per-view is concerned. This is also another chance for them to also vie for other title opportunities besides the cruiserweight title itself. So that's also kind of one of the reasons I wanted to include these two teams in this tag tourney. So yeah, this is going to be something to really get the crowd really amped up about. I mean, this is basically what you would expect for a cruiserweight match, especially with the way that WCW was presenting these cruiserweights for a good number of years up in this point. So I really want to continue to spotlight the cruiserweight division, especially taking it up to a next level. So I expect a lot of spots here and there, especially with the aerial attacks and the springboard dives and whatnot, just to give them some much needed credibility. And we're not going to have any shenanigans or outside interferences. I know the LWO has a good plethora of members within that group. Guerrera and Psicosis are going to walk out of the match as your new World Tag Team Champions. Now we segue into our second match. So we have Konnan taking on Disco Inferno. Now Konnan's just off the heels of his loss to Lex Luger at Sold Out. So Konnan, comes out on Nitro, maybe cuts a promo questioning the motives behind the NWO's merger, and as well as his former teammates with Kevin Nash and Lex Luger, why they decide to patch things up with Hogan, and Konnan just kind of feeling like the odd man out in this whole debacle. Going back to the spring of '98, Kevin Nash decided to branch off and form his own faction after a falling out with Hulk Hogan, and especially with his all about me attitude. So when Konnan decided to join the Wolfpack, that realizing that this could be an opportunity for him to really stand out as the superstar that he wants to be. And he sided with Nash and Luger through and through, and just even over the course of 1998, rebelling against the NWO Hollywood, especially with Hulk Hogan. And it seemed like throughout the months, he's wondering exactly when they're going to get to Hogan. When are we going to take down NWO Hollywood for good? And it turns out, by the time New Year's rolled around, finding out that Kevin Nash and Hogan were conspiring together this whole time, plotting out Goldberg's loss, especially with the losing the world title and their connection to Scott Hall. So Konnan is just kind of really confused, betrayed, and even feeling gullible, knowing the fact that he put plenty of faith with the Wolfpack experiment. But now with Lex Luger, he interrupts Konnan's promo, and he goes on for the record that, looking at, when he looks at Konnan, he just believes that during the Wolfpack days that he thinks that Konnan thought of himself to be bigger than the group. Konnan is just still very livid, especially with the way that Luger's been acting. Konnan is willing to, get back at the guys that betrayed him by starting with Lex Luger. So he insists that he have a rematch, due to the shenanigans from Sold Out. But Luger's kind of like, what? I would like to face you, Konnan, but unfortunately, I'm not able to compete. And I believe, Lex Luger suffered a shoulder injury. So unfortunately in real life, I am unable to book a match between Luger and Konnan, especially a grudge match of some sort. So to kind of compensate this, so Lex Luger decides to bring out his substitute, Disco Inferno. And the thing that they were doing with Disco during this time was his express interest in becoming an NWO member. Luger brings out Disco, and he kind of gives Disco this kind of lifetime of an opportunity, and that if Disco were to beat Konnan, then Disco would be promoted as a new member of the NWO. So this kind of builds into that match here at Super Brawl. Konnan's going to go over Disco Inferno in this match. We would expect some interference with Lex Luger, so he'll be sort of a corner man to Disco Inferno, and he's gonna do his part and to kind of make sure that Konnan doesn't win the match. Like, he's rubbing Konnan's arms with his armband. Like, he's just resorting to some dirty tactics while the referee's distracted. Like, I believe they were, Luger was in a relationship with Miss Elizabeth, so they were kind of doing something together. You could have maybe both Luger and Elizabeth accompany Disco. And so maybe Elizabeth could just be on the ring apron, distracting the referee, and Lex Luger just putting his hands on Konnan while Disco's kind of in his most vulnerable state. So you could do stuff like that throughout the match. Wouldn't get a lot of time compared to the opening match, but at least a sufficient amount of TV time. And in terms of TV time, I mean like a TV style match. So not one that goes over like 15 minutes or anything like that. But it's going to be under 10 minutes. And Konnan's going to go over Disco Inferno, even despite the odds stacked against him. Maybe we could have like towards the end of the match where Disco Inferno is received the steel plate from Luger, and he tries to use it on Konnan, but Konnan blocks it, and maybe like Miss Elizabeth is still distracting the referee. So then Konnan picks up the wristband, he clubs it on the Disco, and the referee doesn't see it. Konnan goes for the Tequila Sunrise. Disco passes out, so Konnan could win the match that way. Luger and Konnan could have their moments, since I'm unable to do a rematch with Konnan Luger anytime soon. So to kind of make up for the lack of a rematch to tie up loose ends, so I'm gonna have Konnan just lay some sense into Lex Luger post match, and then maybe use the wristband, that steel plate forearm, and he's going to like club it right on the Lex Luger. And so just kind of have Luger have his taste of his own medicine. So there you go at that. Now we get to our next match. So we have Booker T taking on Scott Hall. So the NWO Elite's at its full force. Scott Hall is kind of like the bridge between the Wolfpack and the Hollywood, and the reason why they're back together again. He laid his hands on his brother Stevie Ray along with the other NWO members, and they just completely ganged up on him after Stevie lost to his brother. So that doesn't sit well with Booker T, and and he's willing to avenge his brother, and just to really try and put them in their place. And what a way to make Booker T into a potential superstar by taking on one of the founding fathers of the New World Order, that being Scott Hall. So they end up having this match. I would have Booker T go over Scott Hall in this match. We could have the NWO coming out there. Booker T could just lay out some of the lower tier members like a Horse, a Vincent, or Brian Adams, Scott Norton, like all the other lower tier members. He's going to do everything in his power to make sure that he wins, and to, even if the referee's like preoccupied with all the outside interferences and whatnot, Booker T is going to put Scott Hall's, in his place, and he's going to nail the Harlem Hangover for the 3 count, and to have Booker T pick up a victory from there. And so I have some pretty big plans for him, and you just have to tune in the next video just to see what that happens to be. Now we get into the 4th match of the night, and the television championship belt will be up for grabs as the defending champion Scott Steiner takes on Barry Windham. Not too long after Steiner wins the TV title belt from Konnan. So Steiner's kind of been unsatisfied with the new regime when it comes to the management side of things in WCW, with Eric Bischoff being removed from his position as president. So now that Ric Flair's taken over that mantle, so it doesn't really sit well with all the NWO members, and Scott Steiner happens to be no exception to that. So Steiner just spends these series of promos just trashing Ric Flair and just being disgusted by everything that he represents as far as professional wrestling is concerned. And the thing with Ric Flair is that being the president that he is, I mean, he even goes as far as taking away all the kinds of privileges that Eric Bischoff gave to them when it came to their guaranteed contracts. the NWO could just basically show up whenever they want. They could defend the title belts whenever they want. But now that Flair's president, he looks to kind of undo all the business decisions that Bischoff has made. Steiner's just sick and tired of the way that management's being held. And, even despite all the efforts that he's made to, give Ric Flair his attention and even issuing a challenge for Ric Flair to take Scott Steiner head on. But even despite that, Flair chooses to ignore. So Steiner takes matters in his own hands. He goes after some of his horseman buddies like Steve McMichael and even a returning Dean Malenko. So, Steiner's just been plowing through some of Ric Flair's accomplices and even goes as far as going after another one of Ric Flair's past allies in Barry Windham. This is kind of a bit of a weird situation because the thing with Barry Windham is that when they brought him back in November of 1998, rather than siding along with Ric Flair and rejoining the Horsemen, so Windham turns on Ric Flair, and it's revealed that Eric Bischoff was responsible for bringing Windham back into the WCW. But the thing is that they didn't necessarily make him an NWO member of sorts. I mean, they just kind of had him kind of do his own thing just to kind of up one over Flair. And, he would still be a part of the WCW roster, but he wouldn't necessarily be an NWO member. I want to say it's kind of like Bret Hart, because, he was siding with the NWO, but he wasn't, an official member. But it was kind of a little weird scenario there. So basically, in Steiner's eyes, that anyone that isn't part of the NWO are against the NWO. That doesn't sit well with Barry. Now that, Bischoff's no longer in power. So, Steiner is just willing to do anything to, really give Ric Flair his attention and to kind of make a statement. We end up having this match here. It wouldn't necessarily be that long. Steiner is going to go over Barry Windham, and he's going to walk out of the match still the television champion. So we could have Steiner utilize the Steiner recliner as Barry submits. So now we get to another championship bout at Super Brawl IX. So we have is the United States Championship on the line. So Bret Hart, going in as the champion, he's defending the belt against Chris Benoit. Basically, Benoit's been kind of on a roll headed into the new year, and he's just been consistently winning matches. He's making people submit to the crossface and really trying to make that out to be a big deal. So Benoit just goes out for the record, ever since Bret Hart stepped foot in WCW, he welcomed him with open arms, and people were proud to see him come into this company after all the shenanigans that happened down up north they can't say WWF, but basically they could mention that that he went through some hard times up north, and initially they welcomed him with open arms when he came to WCW, but now ever since he decided to show his true colors and to really do some very questionable antics that doesn't sit well with all of his best friends that have stuck by him throughout the years. And Chris Benoit just feels very disappointed in Bret, and that he's just this stuck up, arrogant wrestler that just thinks that he's better than everyone else, even despite the fact that he's not an official NWO member. But he's also showcasing that sign where he respects the NWO. Just kind of makes Benoit sick to his stomach. Even with all the encounters that they've had even several months prior, especially when it comes to kind of their series of matches that they had on Nitro. But now they kind of get this opportunity to square off for the first time on pay-per-view. On Bret Hart's side, so he's continuing to go over some of the young up-and-coming talent that he's facing, and we could even have him have a match against El Dandy, after that infamous promo he did during this time. I know they Bret Hart did everything he could to just kind of put over some young talent, especially like El Dandy in that promo. But the thing is that they never had him and Dandy in a one-on-one match. So if I were to book WCW that year, if it were up to me, I would have definitely have done a Bret Hart versus El Dandy match, maybe on like a friggin' Thunder or a Nitro. I mean, it's a very incredible promo, and it's definitely become a meme over the years. So you could really tell, like, even though Bret Hart's run in WCW was such a downgrade from his time in WWF, but at the same time, he did have his moments, and he did have some hidden gems during this time. So it wasn't just all doom and gloom, despite Bret's feelings towards the company and, whether he still had the heart or not, no pun intended. But it showed that there was a part of him that was really eager to go out there and to, make the most out of a bad situation. So yeah, I definitely would do a Bret versus Benoit match at Super Brawl. And if you've seen some Bret and Benoit matches on YouTube or on the WB Network, especially when you're looking all these catalog of matches that they had in WCW, you definitely know what to expect with these matches. And this is going to be the kind of match that would put over Chris Benoit, especially given his history with Bret and doing everything he can to fight out of his signature moves, especially with Bret's sharpshooter. So Benoit can counter that. Maybe he could lock in the sharpshooter of his own and make it seem like Benoit's gonna potentially win the match. But unfortunately, Bret manages to grab the ropes. The match goes on. Benoit gets the crossface locked in. Bret Hart reverses. Just a couple near falls here and there. And Bret Hart's going to walk out of the match still the United States champion. So Benoit's doing his best to really try and find a way to break the hold. But unfortunately, he's like farther away from the ropes. Like it seemed like every time that he tries to crawl and starts to get closer and closer to the ropes, but Bret drags him away from it. So this causes Benoit no choice but to submit to the sharpshooter. So Bret Hart is going to retain the United States title that way. Now we get to our triple header as far as this pay-per-view is concerned. So we have Goldberg versus Bam Bam Bigelow. Goldberg still has a score to settle with some of the wrestlers that were responsible for screwing him over, especially as far as losing the world title belt's concerned. So Goldberg's continuing his path of destruction at the end of Sold Out. So Goldberg basically got his revenge over Scott Hall. Bam Bam came out there, assaulted Goldberg, but eventually DDP made it out there in time to make the save. Basically at Super Brawl, it's the man versus the beast. Like how Bobby Heenan used to put over Goldberg many times on commentary as the man. So we could even have the announcers pointed out that it's the man versus the beast. And this was actually a match that they did in the actual Super Brawl 9 card, so I'm definitely going to keep it there. And I will have Goldberg go over Bam Bam Bigelow. So not a very long match, but at least a reasonable length where these two guys could go at it. And, it would be a slugfest, no doubt. But Goldberg's definitely going to get his moment, and he's going to give Bam Bam his comeuppance. Does his traditional spear jackhammer combo, and he's going to win the match right there. So even though he's got Bam Bam out of the way, he still has some score to settle with the top tier members of the NWO are concerned. And we get to another match that happened on the actual Super Brawl card. So we have Hollywood Hulk Hogan going one-on-one with Ric Flair. So this is basically a continuation of their encounter, especially from that six-man tag match at Sold Out where they were on opposing sides, and Ric Flair's team managed to pick up a victory. Hogan's looking to get back at Flair, especially now that he's WCW president. He booted Eric Bischoff out of his role, and now he's stuck to putting the ring ropes in place, and he's cleaning toilet seats. He's doing all these janitorial duties that doesn't really sit well with him. Hogan isn't having it. So he ends up getting personal. Like he's gone as far as attacking Ric Flair's son David. Like, he's just doing everything he can to really get under Flair's skin. You know, even the NWO beats Flair up in the middle of the desert, which was kind of bizarre just knowing that actually happened at one point. And I did remember there was an episode of Nitro where, like, after Flair got beat up in the desert, he ended up finding a way to return to the arena. And, you know, even despite walking with a limp leg, like, he's just all battered and bruised. But even despite that, he was looking to really take matters in his own hands against Hogan and even the NWO cronies that side with him. Yeah, so we end up having this match here. It's kind of more of a bad blood feud, and you know, neither of them are world champions, so this could just really stand out as just a secondary big time rivalry that's going on in the company at the moment. Flair and Hogan are no strangers to each other. They fought numerous times since Hogan came to WCW. I would still keep this match. I just wouldn't have the world title belt on the line. Eventually you would get the typical NWO interfering and, you know, Flair just doing everything he can to just fend them all off. Even we could have like some of the Horsemen members coming out to even the odds. Out of nowhere, Scott Steiner just hops over the barricade, or they actually did not have a barricade, but they have the guardrails, and so like Steiner just comes from the crowd. He attacks Flair out of nowhere. He could even, I guess you could either have him use the Steiner screwdriver on him, or you could just have him come out with the TV title belt and just clubs it on the head of Ric Flair, so laying him out cold. You know, the referee could be like distracted because of all the NWO interference, and you know, he's having a hard time monitoring the match, so there's just so much shenanigans going on. You know, Hogan's slowly getting back up, like he's a little dazed, but you know, he's still in the match. So utilizing this advantage, Hogan goes for his leg drop, goes for the cover, referee turns around, goes for the 3 count. Hulk Hogan successfully goes over Ric Flair in that match. You know, Scott Steiner's making a statement, and so having him interfere in this match and costing Ric Flair the match as well just doesn't sit well with Flair. So this is kind of really at that point where the shots are fired. So now you have a new feud being set up. You know, Flair is definitely going to go after Steiner. You know, he's definitely had enough with all his BS. And we get to the World Championship match between Kevin Nash defending the belt against Diamond Dallas Page. Kevin Nash has been kind of on a hot streak lately. He went as far as to putting an end to the Giants' WCW career, and so he's sent him packing for good. So Nash is seeking for his next challenger. DDP rises to the occasion. Page alludes back to their past partnership that he had with Nash, and you know, going back to all the times where Kevin Nash had offered him a spot to join the NWO, but you know, Page also makes it known that, you know, going back to, you know, June, the last time that, you know, Kevin Nash offered Page an opportunity to join the Wolfpack, he was offered that role, but Page decided, you know what, you know, like Page just basically turned down his offer. And, you know, looking back on it, it's like he had no regrets on it, especially with how much of a liar that Kevin Nash is. You know, he turned him down not only once, but twice. And, you know, that he was, you know, that Page is actually glad in retrospect that he didn't have to fall for his trick there. So eventually this match is announced for Super Brawl. The world title belt's up for grabs. In the moments leading this match, because of the interferences that happened with Hogan and Flair, so Kevin Nash insists the NWO to stay put, to stay backstage, that he could do this on his own. Eventually, Nash and Page end up having their match. Page tries to go for that figure 4 apron onto Nash. There could be moments where Nash tries to go for like a snake eyes, and then like Page counters into like a diamond cutter. He goes for a cover, Nash kicks out. You know, we could have like Nash and Page just brawl at ringside, maybe in the crowd while the refs knocked out for a bit. but they eventually get back in the ring in time before the 10 count. And then there would be a spot at the end where we could have, like, Kevin Nash goes for, like, a choke slam of sorts, and then Paige counters into a diamond cutter, goes for another cover, but Kevin Nash's foot's on the rope, but the referee doesn't notice. The ref signals the bell. He assumes that Diamond Dallas Page won the match and the world title, but then another referee comes out there to kind of address a potential issue that happened in regards to the finish. So with the instant replay, so it shows that after Page did the diamond cutter, when he put his shoulders over Page, or when Page put his shoulders over Nash. So Nash put his foot on the rope the instant that the ref got to a 3, so the referee wasn't able to see it in time. The match ends up getting restarted. Page goes back to assault on Nash. Nash eventually fights back, goes for a jackknife powerbomb, gets the 3 count. Kevin Nash is still your world heavyweight champion. The crowd boos. And so even though Nash didn't have any help from the NWO, but he showed that even at the end of the day that, Nash could fight his own battles. And, because what happened with Starrcade and even at Sold Out, where it seemed like there was like interferences going on in his matches. But here at Super Brawl, it shows that Nash could, that he could still come out on top, and to show that even as world champion that he could fight his own battles. So that's kind of the selling point in this match. And Page is like left like deflated, and it's like he just came up short. He looked like he had Nash's number, but things just didn't go the way as planned. So yeah, that's really my card for Super Brawl 9 there. So feel free to leave down your comments in the comment section below what your guys' thoughts on regarding about the card. Stay tuned for my next installment as I will tackle the March pay-per-view event Uncensored. Thank you all guys for watching, and until next time, this is Jimmy signing out.